Call this meeting of the staff members who are going to be sworn in. State your name for the record.
Stephanie Kensler, Planning Manager, City of Columbus.
Stephanie, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Okay. Next up, minutes from the last meeting. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes? Any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Sorry, to interrupt. I need to do your roll call. And
I'm sorry, I forgot the roll
it's
call.
okay. And there's a lot of faces that I personally don't recognize, so I just wanted to make sure there wasn't anyone here for public forum. We can do the roll call first and then circle back. So roll call, Mr. Fergus.
Here.
Mr. Way.
Here.
Mr. Bush.
Here.
Mr. Noppi.
Here.
Ms. Vetter. Here. Mr. Sweeney.
Here.
Out in Franklinton, but we do have a quorum.
All right, let's go back to those minutes. I would entertain a motion to approve. So motion to approve. So second. Mike approves and Sweeney seconds. Sweeney seconds. Roll please.
Mr. Fergus.
Approve.
Mr. Way.
Approve.
Mr. Bush.
Approve.
Mr. Noppi.
Abstain.
Ms. Benner. Abstain. Mr. Sweeney.
Approve.
Hamilton is not here. It carries.
Bond, new applications. First application is EF 23-01001. Address is 464 West Town Street. The applicant is Kathleen Harper and the owner is Harper Enterprises Incorporated. Stephanie, staff report, please.
Okay. Second, I'm just confirming there was no one here for public forum. Yeah. Okay, cool. And then I think we have a couple people recusing themselves from this one.
Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse myself in the next two applications.
Mr. Chairman, I'll need to recuse myself from the next application.
There's the door.
My first recusal. Sorry, which one? Right. Wait. Sign it.
There's no. That's entirely up to you, but. Staff report. So, the materials, I'll read the staff report and then scroll through. And as I noted, this came in as one application, so the material package for the first two are the same. Staff reports are different, though, and they have different project numbers, so we can act on them. So the first one is 464 West Town Street. This is a request for action for a demolition. The applicant is requesting review and action on a proposed demolition of a single-family home located at 464 West Town Street. Upon demolition of the structure, the site would be backfilled, graded, leveled, and capped with recycled 304 gravel. The submittal includes a site plan and exterior existing condition photos. The proposal is inconsistent with the recommendations of the East Franklinton Creative Community District Plan. The plan recommends that historic and other contributing buildings should be preserved to the extent possible. Further, no replacement use is being proposed. Staff does not support the demolition of the single-family home, circa 1892, based on the information provided, as it represents a historic style and pattern of single-family home development on West Town Street. However, the home is likely not eligible for the local register. Staff recommends continuing the application to allow the applicant time to produce additional information regarding the condition of the existing building in the form of a conditions assessment, as well as interior photographs, and to either identify a replacement use or provide a detailed plan on how the property will be made. Staff recommends continuing. Snow for action.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
For both of these, the applicant did provide a from an engineer this afternoon. I didn't have time to get it to you all. I apologize. Both of the properties are here. If you want to look those over, and just briefly being able to look at, we should be briefly being able to look at it before the meeting. I it doesn't change staff's recommendation. We would still need additional information. Understanding that the engineer did go out, but there aren't any photos of the conditions and describing, so in our opinion, we would still recommend continuing. Screen, it's photo.
See one picture there. Are there any more pictures you get?
Yes. No additional photos were provided. So I don't have anything inside or like.
Historic style, just historic style.
So these are the photos of this first one on Town Street.
Any questions for staff?
Did also run this past our historic preservation folks in the office, and they were a part of coming. They did not see the evidence from the photos that we have that supports me.
So as part of this process, does the city send somebody to inspect the affected?
No, sometimes the HPO staff will go out to the site visit.
Clients on structural side, the applicant and outside, so.
Yes, so sometimes there will be buildings that get like code violation orders where the city is more involved, but in this
But
case,
not in,
Okay, if the applicant would step forward, please. Good afternoon. State your name for the record, please.
Kathleen Harper with Harper Enterprises.
And Ms. Harper, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief? The floor is yours.
Okay, I think I heard somebody say that the engineer only looked at it from the outside. Did I hear somebody say that? They did enter, they did go into the crawl space, they did do a thorough inspection.
no, I'm sorry, I was saying we only had photos of the.
I understand, I thought I heard somebody
Yeah,
else
no,
say.
no, I was.
Okay. These have been boarded up, both of these, I'll talk in common if I may, for over 20 years. No utilities to them. Give you a little bit of my background. I won't go into a whole lot of detail, but I've been there for 45 years. We own the Capital Elevator Manufacturing Plant, which obviously Lauren recused herself for obvious reasons, because we did, after leasing it to them for a period of time, sell the building to them, and are also assisting with them as they develop that beer garden, which we are leasing them that property. I also have a email from Brad DeHaze, who we know has some background with historic preservation, who owns the Rehab Tavern adjacent to us. He is also in support of demolishing both of these structures. They are a nuisance, they are harboring vagrants and drug dealing, and boarding them up doesn't help. The amount of money that would have to be put into those makes no sense. We also, and I apologize, I'm skipping to the other property, but they're one and the same to me, is adjacent to 2 other lots that we own on McDowell. So having those 3 lots together vacant makes more sense than trying to retain a structure there.
Questions for the applicant? I'll start. Do you have any plans for the property right now?
Not at this time. We didn't have any plans for the beer garden either. So sometimes when you create the space, then the development happens. But to only have 2 lots there with a house that somebody would need to sink a lot of money into, it's non-productive to have just those 2 lots sitting. With 3 lots, you got a better chance. With Catalina's coming in across the street, with rehab, with Brewdog, with land grant, we're surrounded by commerce, and it would make sense if this is the direction it would go. Obviously, at that point in time, we would come to the board with any developer.
The home next to you on Town Street, that's the one that FDA, Franklinton Development Association, is.
I guess, I think that's been 2 years or so.
That's
And the other comment that, West Town Street, that these were single-family homes there, they were not. Those were never single-family, except for those two at the end of the street there. Those were row houses that, again, infiltration of water, et cetera, crime in the neighborhood with open shelter, Riverside Bradley, et cetera, those ended up having to go by the wayside. And quite frankly, I think what's happening there is wonderful for the neighborhood, and we are very pleased and proud to be part of it. And I obviously credit Brad Hayes, I'll credit Land Grant and the other players that have made such a wonderful improvement. My family is a family of entrepreneurs, and I really appreciate working with other entrepreneurs who are taking this vision and moving forward with it.
You said you own some other properties. You said 2 other properties in addition to these. Is that right?
On that particular block, with the exception of Land Grant Building, Rehab Building, the FDA Building, and the house on the corner of Chapel and McDowell, and the lot adjacent to the parking area for rehab. So the majority of the property we do own, yes, the majority of the block. And I also transferred property to rehab so that they could purchase the 3 Deuces because they needed that additional parking. So we relinquished some of our ownership to them to kind of help get things started in the neighborhood.
Discussion?
So after 20 years of vacancy, why demo them now?
We haven't had time to get to it up until now. We've been working a lot with helping Land Grant get their operation going and the properties signed over to them. I am one of 9 children and had elderly parents over the last decade or so. Lost my mother, who was the last of the living parent, just a year ago. So my focus has really not been on that end of the block. It's been very much on the other end of the block. We're paying money for taxes unnecessarily. We're housing vagrants and potential crime, which I'm not comfortable with. And I think that it's only right for our neighbors, our neighboring businesses, to keep the area clean and free of that type of activity.
Is there a reason you don't rent?
Money. They don't justify, in my mind, and I've done some renovation myself, but in my mind, they don't justify it at all. There's no return on investment whatsoever. They don't lend themselves to the life that we live these days. They're quite small, and putting that kind of money, it's just a money pit.
So you don't have a plan for, but you must have some kind of thoughts about what would be the right thing to put there. Would it be residential or would it be?
I think the area is commercial. I think it makes sense. But again, that would not be my decision. It would be whatever East Franklinton Review Board and a developer would determine to be acceptable. But I personally believe, just as this has always been quite commercial with B&T Metals, the shoe factory behind us, Suite of Freezer, Caddy Corner, historically that was what was there. I think that it pretty much lends itself to continuing in that vein, especially with, there's Catalina's, there's Brewdog, there's Strongwater, there's Rehab, there's Land Grant. So all of that lends itself to that type of an operation.
Personally, say I've spent a lot of time over in that area, so I can speak to that. I've seen a little bit of an issue there, so I just understand where she's coming from with the vacancy and things like that. So it's by what you've seen, it's quite personally, that I can second that. I've seen it. So.
7.
a decision to make here.
Are we still in questions or do we?
We're in discussion.
Okay.
Let's discuss.
I would say on face value, my take on, so my background is I renovate and build houses for a living. Without seeing pictures or inspecting it, is that those homes could be renovated. So the concept of demolishing the houses when the city plan states don't, without a replacement plan in place, with just on face value, we're trying to follow the plan. Because they could be renovated or they could be sold to somebody willing to renovate. That's what the plan calls for. That's what should happen. I think the board can would be more justified in making an exception to the demolition rule if there was a replacement plan, because then we can weigh what we value. But to just demo it with no plan and sit vacant for, that seems to go against what's being outlined.
Board has been consistent, saying you're relatively new. Since the beginning, the board has been consistent about not tearing down existing residential without a plan. And when I look at that block of McDowell, there's already existing residential there, different types, row houses, single family. I think that block could hang together as additional residential, but I'd be willing for it to be different residential, but without a plan, I wouldn't support tearing down what's there now without something better being put back in its place. And again, I'm not sure that I would be in favor of commercial, could be mixed use. So again, I'm stuck. One, again, the demolition, the information we're getting on the structure, I think is minimal. I think pictures of the inside and just this report, even though I've had like 5 minutes to look at it, it just says, uses the word is poor. Well, what's that mean? I need more detail to really understand demolition. I would need to have an idea of what's going to go back there that's going to be better than what's there now. I know it's an older house, but I think residential is appropriate. That is residential. It could be rehabbed. But if it was a new residential and it fit into the neighborhood, it's that there could be a
Well, and I'm certainly not averse to that. I think that having the vacant lot there is much more conducive to potential future improvements than dilapidated buildings. Very concerned about crime, very concerned about people getting hurt in those buildings. The engineer that I was with did not want me to even come in past a certain point. He said the floor is so weak. I'm concerned about people getting hurt there. I think it's a safety issue. I think it's a safety issue for those that might be breaking into it. I think it's a bigger safety factor for the surrounding neighbors. Again, we have demolished 23 structures on that block. And we see what it's led to. I'm absolutely not averse to a mixed use on McDowell. I'm not averse to anything that is a positive improvement for the neighborhood. I think that's painfully obvious for what we've already been involved with. I just think that leaving those buildings there invites more problems. I'd like to eliminate the problems, as I'm sure our neighbors would attest to as well. And I understand it's a little bit different, but you want to leave boarded up structure there. I don't think you want, I feel like you're saying you are telling me I must sell these. That's how it feels. So we've been there again 45 years. I think we're doing the right thing by removing the blight. And I would hope that you would agree.
Ask the other board members here, would it help in your evaluation if we had detailed information from the structural photos, possibly including testimony?
And one other point, house on the corner that brought up, that's the one that's been rehabbed. Right? Yeah. There's a house that already been invested in. So it just seems strange to start tearing things down. stating it by itself.
Remember, Trent, you can step forward, but I have to swear you in.
Absolutely.
State your name for the record, please.
Trent E. Smith.
And you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief.
It is. So as far as the house on the corner, that's being rehabbed not for residential. That's actually going to be a commercial operation. So that's being set up to be conducive for like an attorney, an engineer, an architect's office, something like that nature.
But it's still residential scaled building.
Correct. I just wanted to make sure.
The mixed use.
Yeah.
But I think there's a scale issue here that we should respect, so you respect the block and the block hangs together.
No, I don't disagree with that. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that that's not going to be a single.
Thank you for that clarification. I had forgotten that.
Okay, that's all I wanted to add.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Trent.
I feel like the conversation has kind of meshed between the two, the one on McDowell, so let me scroll through those photos, and the staff reports, I'm sure you've all had them, so you saw that they were very similar.
Could you scroll through, let's look on this one?
Yeah.
There's a photo that kind of like just points out like the light that she was referring to, go like towards there's one at the front of the building, and you see like a bunch of like debris in the front area. Just to kind of give an idea of what she's saying as far as like yeah. You
You
start
can
to see
see
like that's
people are using
they're
that.
using that for a home.
Correct. And if you look at the next picture, you'll see where they're climbing in, and we found drug activity in the second story.
So the primary difference between the two staff reports is that older, because it's 10 years old, 1882-ish, that one was determined by to likely. Scroll through those photos and then.
That one, and again, just visually, it looks much better condition. Engineer's report says it's better condition, doesn't say it's great condition.
Sure, and that's generally been the opinion of staff when we get these to demo single family home. Show why. It's just to continue saying yes or no.
Mike, yeah, are you, I want to know where everybody stands here.
Still supports staff's decision on that. Except without having a accept and understanding, but I at least wanted to point out, show that there was some proof of what you're stating as far as the vacancy.
If we continue both of these applications, what conditions would everybody potentially support demolition? Plan in place, or show number one, that there's a vagrancy problem there. Two, that properties in very poor condition, economic. Comment?
Well, and again, economically that's not.
I want to give her some,
Yeah,
I want to give her some feedback here.
economically is not in our. So it's just, we want to have this historic, this older house, a historic date, rehabbed and contributing to the neighborhood, or do we just let it? And I definitely feel totally different about the two properties. Same. But I want to know more detailed information about the structure and it's not necessarily the cost of, but just, is it heavy renovation? It's kind of like a spectrum. It's not a light.
Yeah,
It's
and the engineer did not take photos, I understand that, and I agree, I would like direction because I've not had to do this previously for the demolitions that we have done on that block, and I can get photos where the roof is caving in and the rebar is hanging out and so on and so forth. Had I known what all I needed today, might have been able to have that. But I agree, I would like very specific information as to what is expected, because I do want to do what's right for my neighbors.
And the only reason, Jim, that I mentioned cost is that it's going to be realistically expensive. Our problem is that it'll never, it's going to sit there until there's a plan, until there's a plan for development. Then the question becomes, if it's never going to be and it's a big vagrancy problem, realistically, what do we do? I could certainly justify the departure from the standards based on vagrancy problem. Well,
So step one is getting a more detailed assessment.
agreed.
And even maybe having your expert come in and testify to us on the record. So that's what's step one. Step two for me is what's the plan? That block develop if it was torn down. Again, it would be kind of conceptual, right? It would be, it would be.
Right, well, I think what the plan, what the development standards is specifically asking. So if you're proposing to tear down a building, at minimum, if you don't have a replacement use, are you seated, or is it gonna be mowed, or plan for, so it doesn't just become a weeded lot that is also a blighted condition?
Yeah.
Obviously, the more detailed the replacement use is obviously.
As I remember it, when we've talked about even like parking, we've talked about screening of some kind, things. So if we're going to make a lot, we gotta know what, even while it's being a vacant lot, how it's being used, and we need standards for what that's gonna look like.
And that's the direction that I would really appreciate understanding from this board. I thought I had provided what was necessary, that the conditions are such that they're just structurally unsound. There are many vacant lots in our area and have been for many years. In fact, we contributed to them. And in fact, I think Mr. Benner would probably state that it was very appreciative that he had vacant lots during the lockdown of the COVID, because they were able to really make use of that space. And we're proud to have a little bit of green space in the area. But we need to know from the people that we have to please what the expectations are without, oh, gee, we need screening. Well, what does that mean to you? We need, now, right now, we have 2 lots immediately adjacent, contiguous to this property that are being mowed, are being maintained. So, you know, instead of the gravel, it could also be the same thing. It could be seeded, it could be mowed. We don't know what is acceptable here.
So I mean, just, Mr. Chairman, if you might remember this, that we actually have denied a demolition because there was no plan. And then happened with it there.
So there has to be some kind of plan.
So I want to be consistent with how we.
Even if that plan is green space or a parking lot, I think we need some detail on this would work.
That would be proposal, right? That would come, and we would say yes, right.
Well, or demolition, if nothing, place with something.
Chair, if I may,
Sure.
just wanted to talk a little further about the light aspect of this.
Okay.
You had some concerns if we don't approve demolition. What happens, you know, if it's a blight. So per building code, property owners are responsible for making. And if they don't, they get code violations. And if they don't address the code violations, it ultimately ends up in fire. If they don't address them, then it goes to receivership and sell the property. So it's not really the board's job to take care of the blight problem. While we would all like to see these blights go away, ultimately these have been sitting here for 20 years and nobody's done anything. So there's an alternative to demolition. It's just a matter of how they.
Problem is that they are being maintained in code right now. Code allows you to completely board up a house. Maintain the boards, right? Got to, got to check for vagrants and drive them out as necessary. Mow the lawn, whatever else, pick up trash, which does seem to be a problem in one of these places. But, they can be maintained like that for many, many years. And plus, as I think she's correct, because I've seen it myself, you maintain it like that, and vagrants, vagrants and drug addicts and whatnot, they're still gonna get in. No question about it. So, I don't see that.
That is the responsibility of the. It's not the.
But again, I guess ideally it's the responsibility of the landowner to maintain it. Realistically, from both an economic and a practical standpoint, she can maintain it as best she can without rehab. Maintain it to code, and it's still going to be a blight on the neighborhood that they can't do it, that nobody can do anything about but us. Because we're the ones who can approve a demolition. Now, I happen to agree that we need number one, to make sure these things can't be realistically rehabbed. Number two, that there's some plan for the property afterwards, short term and hopefully long term. At least concepts long term.
Realistically, as long as I've been on the board, I've had people come up to me all the time and say, hey, do you know it's rented and I want, and they're looking for a single family house that they could buy and renovate. So this is a perfect example. Again, I can't tell what exact condition of both those properties, but I know that there's a market out there for people who just love to come in.
One that intrigues me is that it's on the board. Same way.
Yeah.
It's intrigued me. I want to know more. So the other one, the short structure, I could imagine where that could.
That's why we wouldn't pull them out separate.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, in an ideal world, the two would switch, because the brick one that I think is probably more saving is the vacant lots, where if you demoed it, a bigger space to do something with. This frame house is locked, doesn't really. It's probably
The space is not that, as you can see, it's not that much. It's well before they started the renovation of the one.
Yeah, the one on Town Street just kind of is sort of out of place. I mean, it's a neat looking house if it was situated on a different street. But
That was on the dot.
It would be out of place if there wasn't the one next to it. That's the thing that's troubling. Even though it's an office, it's still a residential original house. And it almost, having the one next to it gives it a reason. And if you took this one out, you'd have that sitting there by itself, which would then look really strange.
if all the other houses were demoed already.
That was before us. That was before us.
Yeah, I think, we need, has this been helpful in terms of what you can come back with?
A little bit.
A little bit. Tell us.
Well, taking them separately. Is there any question about the Town Street property?
I still have a question.
As far as the condition?
And the plan, condition and plan.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. And so, if the plan were to be grass, does that satisfy anyone? The new offices next door could put a picnic table on it, they could have some space, green space out there for lunches, just a thought. Need to start somewhere.
One of the purposes of this board is to keep the fabric of East Franklinton together, or to rebuild it to perhaps what it was. And I think every lot is important to thinking about how we maintain that fabric. The plan for East Franklinton has different zones, and it gives us leniency in certain areas that some areas are more residential, others there's flexibility for development. So that's the way I look at it. If there's fabric to be here and fabric to be, it's the right fabric. And that's where I then as a board member say, well, there's flexibility in terms of what the use is, what scale of the building. Is it a row house? Is it a single family? Is it a commercial office building? Those are the things that we would weigh. So I'd want to see plans that would help to reinforce the fabric in this block. As I said before, residential scale, 2-story, different types of architecture, that's fine. It seems to be that the block wants to kind of continue that fabric, which was historically what was there.
Does that help at all?
Now,
Well,
I find, go ahead.
If I can help, I think what I'm hearing is that to further the conversation, you want her to come back with the engineer to testify in person on record, and you want interior photographs of both properties showing the condition.
That's definitely true. Okay.
And so more specific pictures of the exterior. I can't look at those pictures and say that was necessarily falling down.
I can provide examples of some of the conditions. I can provide examples of some of the conditions assessments we've had.
That would be very helpful.
To show the level of detail. we're
That would
looking
be very helpful. So I sense that is only step one. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you want more beyond that?
So 2 will be the space afterwards. And again, I think somebody mentioned earlier, like, there was a parking lot for some to have something, I guess.
And that could all be considered in one meeting when she returns. I mean, she could provide all of that and have it discussed all at once.
Absolutely.
So you're not going to be making trips.
Do I understand that if it is used for parking, that is a change of zoning and that causes another problem? Yeah, I would prefer it not be.
New parking.
Great question. I would have to look because within the last year, the East Franklinton special parking area went into effect. So parking is much more out of the hands of the board historically. So I would have to look at that. I believe there are some specifics about like accessory parking lots that like may serve something that's not on the same parcel. But I would have to.
It's not my intent to turn it into a parking lot. That's far from my desire. But it's interesting if there was an opportunity for accessory for a neighbor or somebody to put something there.
I would have to look at it. I think from a staff perspective, definitely additional information on, when we're looking at demos, we need very detailed information about the conditions to justify the demo, and then the next step in the plan, the East Franklinton, checklist that we review is what is the plan for the property if you're not going to rebuild something there, like we said, is it going to be grass, it's just going to be mowed, is the neighbor going to use it for, those things are a plan. So it doesn't, you don't have to go and find a developer and come up with a proposal, but those are kind of the 2 check boxes I have to see.
Okay, so if this would turn into a grassy site, let's say both, just for conversation, and I heard something about screening, I'm not mistaken. So if these were turned into grassy sites, what kind of screening or is screening required?
I think screening would only be required if it's a parking lot. If it's just a green space. Yeah, I don't think anything else is.
I think the minimum, and just to clarify, whatever plan you come back with, just because you have a plan doesn't mean that the board will support it, but we need to have a plan for them to evaluate and discuss. But I think just green space would, the minimum is just, maintaining it to code, like however high the grass and the weeds.
Sure,
and that
we're,
kind of-
we're already doing that on the adjacent lots. Obviously, I'm trying to press a little bit further to say, okay, and when I come back the next time, it could be a one-time, one-stop shop, and I would have some understanding of, am I wasting my time? Or is what I'm presenting, let's just say a grassy lot, going to be at all acceptable?
So we're all individuals, right? And we're here to defend the East Franklinton. But in the plan is great. I just want to point out that the one board member that's not here today is our historic preservation argument. She may have a different opinion that we're not expressing, so they're just.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So,
Your presence is very helpful.
Yeah, that would have been.
Okay.
Stephanie, just to give the clearest guidance to the applicant. So if, let's say a plan comes back with a grassy lot sometime later, you should do something other than grassy lot. Process of that.
That would come back as a separate application. So, for the demos, both of those things are in one to say that we're okay with the demo. The plan and the condition assessment justified in. So those wouldn't be two separate things. Now, where, as you mentioned, I would come back for repeated meetings and, efficient use of time. If you came back with both of those next month and the board wasn't on board with the plan you presented, that's where, there, additional continuances
Sure.
for additional meetings. But generally, those two things are going to need to be checked before the demos would be approved. And then something in the future, whether you sold the property, if someone else wanted to build something, or you wanted to build something, that would just be a separate application to the
Understood.
HRB to go. Construction.
Let me ask this of the members present, since it's next month. Assuming that the applicant returns with a plan that says green space, properly maintained to code, is that sufficient for mine? And take the other issues aside, okay? Just that one issue, is that a sufficient plan for be able to support demolition? Might as well get that out front now.
Based on what we know today, I would find that part of support.
Well, all right, but again,
You're presuming we have an engineer
yeah,
who
let's assuming the
testifies.
engineer comes in and says these places are a complete mess.
Yes.
You couldn't rehab them for, any realistic sum of money that would give anyone any kind of return on investment, ever, right? Assuming assume those facts for the moment. So that we've kind of, okay, these places are never going to be rehabbed, one or the other, right? Assuming that's the case, is a plan for space a sufficient plan?
so in my mind, it's just a temporary until something else is put in its place. To me, if the property cannot be saved because of whatever information is given to us and the case is made, in my mind, I would want back what was there. It's either it's a single family house, or it's a building that looks like a single family house that might be an office, or is it an expansion of the commercial property that's there that makes some sense? That to me is going back to the idea of maintaining the fabric. If we just come into East Franklinton and take down houses, put green space and just leave it, that's not what we're trying to achieve.
No, and I think that she had kind of stated that at the beginning, that, you know, she sees that as making space for relevant commercial development, that in my mind, as far as I understand the East Franklinton plan, would definitely be mixed use. I mean, it would not be just a commercial building, it would definitely be mixed use.
But the reality is, it's a single family lot. You can't get anything much on a single family lot other than.
But when she owns the parcels next to it, then she can
That's-
combine them and then make something significant.
That's why we need to see the plan.
Okay.
It's either you redevelop that lot, or there's a bigger plan for the area, is the reason to tear it.
What else? Okay, we need a motion. I move to continue.
Second,
Seconded to continue the application.
Yes, we will do two. So let's do the motion to continue 464 West Town. So that was a motion to continue by Mr. Fergus, seconded by Mr. Way. Mr. Fergus,
Approved.
Mr. Way,
Approved.
Mr. Bush,
Approved.
Mr. Noffi,
Approved.
Spencer, Hamilton, so motion carries.
Same motion, same movers.
Okay. Yes. So, Mr. Fergus,
Approved.
Mr. Way,
approved.
Mr. Bush,
Approved.
Mr. Noffi,
Approved.
motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, next application, we've already done 23-01-002. We are now going to EF 23-01-003. Address is 455 West Broad Street, Gravity 2. Kessler Sign Company is the applicant, and Ohio Health is the owner. Stephanie, staff report, please.
Oh, yeah, we should get our.
Very happy.
Send our-
I'll back to the-
As long as you have.
I have to bow out. Temporary chairman.
Michael's here. Well, if this conversation is still going on, then yes.
For the record, I assume that I'm chairman. It's everybody, want somebody different.
Okay,
Yes, they're all tired of me.
thank you.
Not yet. but-
Sweep the door.
Welcome back.
Okay. So we are considering application EF 23-01-003. Yeah, work please.
Thank you. This is 455 West Broad Street. This is a signage application for an Ohio Air in the Gravity 2 project. The applicant is requesting review and action on a signage package for a tenant space within Gravity 2 in the West Broad Street subdistrict. The proposal consists of 7 signs, 2 internally illuminated red channel letter urgent care wall signs, Total graphic area for each is 15.96 square feet. There's 2 internally illuminated white channel letter Ohio Health, including the logo. Walls. Total graphic area is 18.89 square feet each. 1 internally illuminated white channel letter medical offices wall sign. Total graphic area 18.13 square feet. 1 internally illuminated projecting sign with push-through letters. Total graphic area 12 square feet. It's 6 square feet per side. And then 1 internally illuminated black cabinet sign with push-through letters and logo. Total graphic area is 32 square feet. The submittal includes a site plan, elevations, renderings, and detailed specifications for the proposed signage. For the staff analysis section, the proposal is somewhat consistent with the recommendations of the East Franklinton graphic design guidelines. The guidelines state that a wide range of design styles are appropriate for East Franklinton and also include recommendations on size and height for specific types of signs. The proposal is generally consistent with these recommendations, with the exception of the cabinet sign, the one that's 32 square feet, on the south elevation exceeding the recommended 25 square feet, and then the top of the projecting sign exceeding 15 feet above grade. However, the guidelines also specify 2 signs per tenant, identifies illuminated box cabinet signs as inappropriate, and states that signage should be a logical and complementary component of the overall building design. The proposal is generally inconsistent with these guidelines, as the applicant is proposing 7 signs, one of which is a cabinet sign. Further, the location of the signage, particularly at the corner of West Broad Street and McDowell Street, may be confusing from a wayfinding perspective, which could result in the need for more signage in the future. Staff notes that in addition to this proposed signage, the board had previously approved a ground sign and a parking sign at this corner as part of the overall Gravity 2 signage and graphics plan a few months ago. The board should take this into consideration when evaluating the entirety of the signage that will be at this corner of the building. Hoffman Development has expressed support for the proposed signage despite not being in line with the previously approved Gravity Mixed-Use Development Retail Signage Plan. While staff understands the nature of the use has unique signage needs, the applicant is encouraged to evaluate the overall signage package and either reduce duplicative signage and or look at different types of signs that may be less intrusive, examples being non-illuminated letters, vinyl window graphics, etc., where possible, as well as evaluate the placement of signage for a more logical wayfinding experience. As such, staff recommends continuing the application to allow the applicant the opportunity to better align the proposed signage with the East Franklinton graphic design guidelines.
Questions for staff?
The applicant did give me some additional, so these are the ones that you already have.
So there's no graphics that sign fits in with the other. So there's other signage that.
Yes, there is not a graphic. So for example, according to the gravity plan that we approved a few months ago, at this corner, there's one of those ground signs that have the functional thing to the different buildings, and also going to be.
Would that signage still happen? Is that been?
Question for our applicant, but it's my understanding, I have not heard that that signage is not. Actually, signage is still happening, I think Jessica. Check.
It would be surplus signage.
Additional different signage.
Else? Applicant, will you both state your names for the record, please? 3 of you.
Of course. I'm Roger Kessler, Kessler Sign Company.
Rob Gordon, Ohio Health.
Anton Johnson, Ohio Health.
Ian Levinson with Kaufman Development.
You can pull up those chairs if you would like to sit at the table.
So Rob Court,
Excuse me, I think I swear you. Gentlemen, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
I do.
Floor is yours, sir.
Rob Court has a couple opening remarks, as well as Anton.
Thank you all for your time. First time experiencing this, appreciate it. So bear with me as I introductions. Thank you. We're here hoping to clearly explain the importance of our signage package, as it is atypical, Stephanie mentioned, under standards. It's also atypical from Kaufman standards, as you're aware.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir. I should probably recuse myself from this application. Mr. Chairman, I apologize to everybody, especially you, but I need to sit this out also.
No problem, Ms. Yes, Sweetie. As I said before.
Better late than never.
Spend the whole meeting.
Yes. You can come back for the other things. Don't leave.
As I was saying, it is atypical from Kaufman standards as well, and as you are aware of it, signage package, we're hoping you all are the same. We do have atypical business from what is currently. So you understand, you grant us atypical signage package from what has been previously. This is a property that will provide medical care and at times life-saving measures.
Please speak up, please. I'm having trouble hearing you.
Sure.
Thank you.
This is a medical facility that will provide medical care and at times life-saving measures for our constituents in the area. We have an incredible design team, engineering team, contractor, building owner, and city, all with equally important parts of this endeavor. With your help, we have an opportunity to provide these critical services to the community as well as the surrounding ones. And that said, as we've already introduced ourselves, we have a team here, Kaufman, Ohio Health, and Kessler Signage. With that being said, Anton, I'd like to turn the table over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. So again, Anton Johnson, I'm director of our primary and ambulatory care service line at Ohio Health. So thank you for the privilege to speak in front of you today. Just want to hit on a little bit about the services that we have in this building associated with the signage. We're bringing primary care and urgent care to this facility. And for Ohio Health, this is really meeting a big access need that we see as a parent in this community, with other local health systems that have pulled health services away from the Franklinton area. So as many of you are well aware, primary care is really the foundation of healthcare. It's an entry point for our patients into other needed medical services. So really excited to provide primary care in this space. Not much of that in the community, to my recollection. Maybe 2 other practices nearby in the Franklinton area. Urgent care, probably even more important for this area. When it comes to urgent care services, I believe we're the only provider of urgent care services in the community. For us, this is a position for a less costly option than emergency medicine. And that's needed, especially for this community. When we look at this area, we see that ED utilization is actually double what it is for the rest of Central Ohio. So putting an urgent care in place here as a less costly option for community members is really important. For us at Ohio Health, this is between 2 of our busiest urgent cares that we have in our portfolio, Grandview and Grove City. So confident that we're meeting a need here as well. So with this really filling the access gap in the area, we feel it's really important to make the presence known, especially with it being an urgent care service and patients needing to find this facility and the services they're seeking, usually under distress, obviously quickly and urgently. So that's part of this signage package and what goes into that consideration. The other consideration is just, and as we do with all of our projects, really looking at this from a patient perspective and how people approach the building. A few unique challenges when it comes to that. Wayfinding, just in general, it's really tough for healthcare facilities, but doing that in the downtown area, especially with this facility where drop-off, can't happen on Broad. It actually needs to happen on McDowell. It is something that we consider just general foot traffic in a high pedestrian area and being visible and it being clear what we're providing from all angles. And then the parking garage and its adjacency to the building, a big consideration. So we have a lot of experience, especially in the urgent care space, 18 of them around the city, and a lot of feedback and learnings about what signage and what our patients need to end up in the right place, which definitely influenced this. So I just would say from my perspective and looking at what our team has put together here with our partners, this feels very appropriate from the patient perspective and what our consumers look for and need when it comes to wayfinding. Personal opinion, I'd actually want to add a couple others, but I think what we have here in this package really meets the need to make the presence known, make it clear what services we're providing, and to find the proper place to access those services in the building.
Okay, Stephanie, can you bring up our deck that I sent you?
Yes, that's it.
This is it?
Yep.
Okay. All right, very good, thank you. On the very corner, perpendicular to Broad Street, they're going to put a parking sign so people know where the parking lot is, which is something very needed. Which, if you're going eastbound on Broad, it will totally block our sign out on the front of the building. Just because it's a projecting sign, and I think it's about 30 inches in diameter and sticks out further than that, maybe
4 feet.
4 feet, yeah. So, the other thing on the front of the building, it's imperative that people know what type of urgent care, and that's Ohio Health urgent care, because your insurance will pay for some and not for the other. Cost me $1,000 to find that out, but that's another story. Then if you're going, if you're going eastbound, the urgent care and Ohio Health, if you can switch to the next slide, I believe. Yes. That's the sign at night, and that depicts pretty darn to scale what you would see when you're driving at night. This property is open until 9 o'clock, and as most of you know, in Ohio, it's pretty dark about 4.
Roger, the lighting also will go off after hours
After,
when the facility closes.
when they close, it will be turned off at 9 o'clock. So as far as any light emissions, once again, we're trying to direct people to go to the right place, the right time. Now, if you have a screaming kid in your car or your parent or whatever, and they're having a medical emergency, the last thing in the world you want is to have to hunt and try to find where I need to go. So I think this clearly will mark the path. If you're coming west on West Broad, the sign on the front will be visible and will direct you, okay, it's right down this way. I think, Stephanie, I want to thank you too for all your help, because you were very helpful. She talked about, well, there's no front entrance on Broad Street, and that's true. When the architects and everybody developed the space, they thought McDowell would be the easiest access and safest access, because once again, you can't get on Broad Street. Sign H in the rear, if you can page through that. Okay, that actually, we've worked with our designers, and we've come up with a system that will be pushed through letters. And the background will match the material that's on that canopy, which is black, which is what you've seen on the other pictures. And it will look like just something that's coming out of the canopy, and not 32 square feet, but more like 15 square feet if you just measure the letters. And that's for people exiting the parking lot, and the first thing they'll see is, yeah, this is the entrance. You don't have to go all the way around the building and halfway up McDowell to get in. You can enter the property right through here. And once again, that sign will be turned off at 9 o'clock, because that's when they close. So I think we have put the best foot forward. Our first plan was substantially bigger and more, and the people from Jessica said, "Oh, that's nice, but we're not going to do that." So we lowered everything down almost in half and eliminated a number of signs that we thought we needed. So there has been a lot of back and forth with Kaufman and their group, and they've been great to work with and trying to lead us to the right direction. So with that said, I'll entertain any questions you may have, or any of our guys will entertain.
And just to clarify, signs that Stephanie had alluded to earlier will be still on the corner south. As Roger alluded to, the parking sign, which will actually be on Broad Street at that projects roughly 4 feet out.
This type of round sign, just that this won't, is unlikely to have tenant-specific information as opposed to like the buildings that are part of the system.
Where's the P?
The P is gonna be, sounds like on the Broad Street face, sticking out.
Right, close to the corner, maybe a few feet from the corner.
So where do you see most of the people come? What direction do they come? Maybe coming east and west on Broad Street, or?
I believe that it'll be east and west and Broad, the ones that are, other than the ones that live immediately in the area and walking to the urgent care or medical offices. But the rest of them will be driving. If you have an urgent care issue, probably aren't walking. Saying that most of the time. So you're probably either you're driving or someone's driving you to, be my guess.
So if I'm in downtown, why am I not going to Grant? Would that be like intuitive? People are Grant.
I think Grant is an ER, isn't it?
I know, but it's, people aren't paying attention, right? They're like, I got a problem.
We put a lot of effort to actually point people the right direction, depending on what the medical issue is. So again, putting an urgent care here is actually a step in that direction to make sure that there's access for those appropriate urgent care issues. So hopefully those living downtown and working downtown for things that should go to urgent care would come here.
No, and that's great.
Yeah.
I'm just saying people don't do what you expected to do.
Oh, yes, we also know that, yeah.
So I'm just trying to figure out where's if Broad Street is really if that's where you're coming, you've got to get somebody either into parking or you be able to drop them off at up front. Correct. And get them in underneath, right? Urgent cares work like that, right? So, so I'm looking at your floor plan. So your check-in desk is off of McDowell, right?
That's correct.
That's in the middle of the block. That's where you want everybody to come. That's your entry.
That's the entrance.
Right.
And we have one in the rear as well.
But they're walking through Ambrose.
No, they're not walking through camp. That's a hallway.
Oh, that way. So why did it get the other?
Yeah, sorry for
It
that.
says H there. I should have paid attention to that.
No, they walk in the hallway and go to the front desk.
So, okay, so those are the people that kind of have, they figured out where parking is. They're gonna go park there.
Yeah, if they're going to the medical offices or they got, temperature or something like that, they'll park in the parking garage and walk that far.
And if people haven't figured out parking, they're in a state of whatever, see the signs for the entrance. Is there a drop-off place for them, or they just pull to the curb, or?
Off of McDowell.
Yeah.
The spot you're talking about.
We believe in those type of urgent matters where drop off is immediately necessary, then that would be the most ideal. So
They
the
gotta-
location.
If they come in off Broad, they gotta get turned around.
Was turn onto McDowell and do drop off there.
I'm just, you know, I kind of work in this space, so I kind of go on. So I'm just trying to figure out what you're proposing here. Is it really getting the patients where they need to go in a crisis or emergency situation where they're scared and, you know, it's not an emergency room, right? It's urgent care, it's a little bit less, but, you know, people show up in urgent cares in all sorts.
My perspective in comparison with what we've done in other urgent care spaces and buildings is that it's enough for patients to piece together where to go for entry and drop off. Like I said in my statement, personally, even more could be done here. But we're trying to stay within code and have scaled back as instructed. So I think it's enough what we're putting forward to get patients to the right place.
So I'm personally sympathetic to the right signage in the right place, not regardless of code, but that you need to get people into the healthcare, right? So my leading question was, where are people coming from? Walk me through the sequence of a patient, either coming by themselves or being by a loved one. How will they be directed? So you're going to give, potentially they might call, say you need to go. Franklinton. How would you do that?
We're talking a phone call or a patient approaching the building.
I'm talking about approaching the building by car, let's say that by car.
Yeah, I'd imagine going down Broad Street, seeing that urgent care sign on the corner, that'd be an indicator to turn on to McDowell, in which you would see the other sign on McDowell above the entrance. And with the parking signage, you know where to park then, and then you'd see the front door under the protruding sign on McDowell.
I think it's critical having both signage on McDowell and Broad. That perspective of practices being in that corner and that side of the building.
For me, Mr. Way, the Broad Street ones are the ones that indicate you're in the right place, driving and approaching. And the next one, the next breadcrumb per se, would be that McDowell signage street, so that I know that is where I enter. But you have to first, and
Is that the sign at the entrance on the?
that's the sign above the entrance.
So that picture.
Definitely, I think there's a rendering of that.
Yeah.
Wiping through your,
Well, it might be a.
we just have the entrance and the sign, it doesn't show it with the sign.
It's further down.
Excuse me, I'm going to have to, arch the way we'll
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
There's
so,
the red.
so you made the corner, you see that sign, what might stop and drop something. The thing I'm trying to get is the parking. Is the parking clear? Is the Kaufman P that, does that lead you to parking?
I would imagine somewhere down the line, I don't know.
Sure,
The sign on the parking garage itself.
there will be an additional signage that designates where the parking garage is. It sits in the middle of the project. And so coming from Broad Street, the P will designate where to turn, and then there'll be something else that directs you into the parking garage.
Yeah, and that's the piece that I would love to see one of your signs on the parking garage, so that when you turn the corner, you see the red urgent care and you headed towards it, because that's going to be the thing that stands out more than anything. And then I assume that it's pretty intuitive to get into the parking garage. From there, you can see the entrance, the building, right? It's open. Right? You can see that sign on the end of the building. So I think that sequence feels pretty good, except identifying where you go to get there.
So that'd be a Kaufman.
You have that laid out.
Yes, we will have wayfinding to get into the actual garage. So when you're on McDowell Street, it won't be specific to Ohio Health. It'll be specific to the parking garage for the entire project.
And what I'm saying is, could it be specific to Ohio Health? Could it be a standard hospital or H or something in red, so that people knew that's where you go if people don't? Parking garages are parking garages, right? because right now the signage, your signage package is more subdued. Stuff like that. Getting to that parking garage to me is probably the one piece that is missing. That intuitively following the red, right, not following the care signs.
Right. So we're completely on board with that. We love additional signage. But unfortunately, that's.
So you're saying that's not.
Would you be okay with that?
I'm saying that the wayfinding package that we have for the entire project will include signage to direct people from and down street into the parking garage. And so, we're incentivized to make sure that people for the entire project, including for Ohio Health, know how to park and then access all aspects of the project. So once you get on that McDowell Street corridor, there will be something that designates parking is here. So anyone coming to Ohio Health, making that left or right turn off of Broad, will see that signage and be able to know where parking is, if they're not just dropping off in front of that first entrance.
But I'm saying it's, if you go to any healthcare campus, not just Ohio Health, emergency is red.
Right.
And that's your breadcrumbs. You follow that and you get to either an E or a care. It seems to me that within your signage package, there could be a provision to get something on the parking garage that identifies that as parking for Ohio. Some people won't necessarily know that that's parking. Just a parking. Gravity parking.
Potentially. And I'll speak with my colleagues to see what other wayfinding is going to be there to, not only supplement, but be in addition to what Ohio Health is providing in their signage package.
I think certainly a possibility. Our request may be that we're able to approve our building signage and work with Kaufman on the parking garage signage.
And it's up to you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that seems like, I get all the rest of the sequence, right?
Yeah.
All the important, making the turn, entrance, parking garage, back into the building. That's what you need.
Yeah.
So, I just know people get trust that they're gonna realize that parking garage is associated with your use, unless there's something on it. This is where you park if you're coming to urgent care.
Yeah.
Certainly makes sense.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. No, I agree with everything you're saying. More signage is good, what the needs are and what this is. I'm really for, again, wayfinding and making sure people know exactly where to go. And there will be some maybe like better signage and that's why I'm okay going against, though the plan is not consistent with everything in the plan for what this is. Signage is the most important.
I think it's all fine, and it can get in the right spot. So the uses that are going to be in the space, obviously, we covered some primary care. Did I hear that? And then anything else? What's the office part of it? Is that just the primary care?
So the medical offices delineate the primary care aspect. Our standard, if there's more than 2 to 3 services in it, we'll capture all those services with.
So would anybody be entering from corner out front? Sorry. Is that going to be unlocked, that door?
It's an egress. It will be locked.
I was just trying to, I'm sure you thought this through to avoid confusion. Sounds like some of the staff's comments had to do with that as well. It's an architect. Sign building, that entrance there looks like a front door, so then it's just kind of confusing. Is there modifications? Kind of change, it looked like there's another picture that we had.
Corner, I think there's just, at the state of construction currently, there's just not glass. Storefront has been put in other places, but for access points for the construction workers inside, they're just keeping the glass out for now. But the glass will look similar to what's on McDowell and also fronting Broad Street. very quickly, just as, representing Kaufman, the owner, we're extremely excited to work with Ohio Health in partnership to bring primary care and also urgent care to Franklinton. We have worked with them collaboratively on signage. We understand that the signage package as presented is, different or a little out of scope of what is typically to in Franklinton, but for the size of the building, it's larger than our typical retail presence, and so we think that the signage package should be larger, should be more opportunities, and because of the use, we really want to direct people and get people to where they need to be and to go. And so, Mr. Ray, your points are very well taken about wayfinding. We learned a lot of lessons with our phase 1, which we're implementing in phase 2 to make sure that we have enough to the garage so that they can get to Ohio Health and all the other aspects of the project that we're working on. So just wanted to say that we wholeheartedly support this package. Excited to bring this project to life with Ohio.
Dedicated spaces in for the urgent care, like ground floor, so you designated urgent care, just walk in.
There are dedicated parking spaces, a number of parking spaces for Ohio Health. Some of those will be occupied by physicians, nurse practitioners, anyone who's working there, and then there will be some dedicated for urgent care as well.
And the urgent care ones will be on the pathway to walk in the building to the.
We'll make it so that it's convenient for understanding how to get out, see the canopy, and then enter into their space.
So I have a question for the Ohio Health folks. Do you ever put arrows?
I can answer that. We've done about 50. No.
How do you feel, Kim, about arrows?
They're tricky. As things change, then the arrows. To me, it's the red. Sure, and that's why I think, well, this signage may be out of sort of with the like this area, right? People have gotten used to the idea when I go to a medical to get health care, it's consistent always across spectrums that you follow red and emergency. And I think this signage is all very clear. It's not overly done. It seems like it's commensurate with serving the use of the offices. It fits.
So to clarify, going back to the staff report, I'm hearing that everyone's generally okay with quantity of signage and the general location of the signage. The one thing that, if approved as presented, that sign type in our opinion was really cabinet sign, which the plan discourages. So I just want to make sure that I'm okay with that type of sign so that I can write it in the COA. The specs for that type of specific sign.
And I don't know, back to a hospital. Those are the signs that usually live. It seems like lighting it a different way might not make it as clear. So
When it illuminates, the only thing that will be illuminated are the letters themselves. The rest of it, daytime or nighttime, will look like it's part of the canopy. Us people in the room will be the only ones who know it's not part of the canopy. That's how cool it's going to be. And
I just gotta call it out.
I understand.
But so
Make sure we're.
can we be specific that because this is that we're making so it's not a blanket backlit signs? Is it out of?
Yeah. That's, a sufficient justification to avoid precedent. Bill's not here.
That's okay.
staff report reflects the code and guidelines. Things, so.
Well, it's down to the three of us.
Motion to,
So that's a motion to approve submitted by Mr. Nobby, seconded by Ms. Benner.
Yes.
Mr. Bush, Mr. Nobby, Ms. Benner, approve. Mr. Sweeney, so the motion carries with 3 of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, that's fine.
We do need to bring our friends back.
Sure.
No,
Well, I mean, you
Bush
can
is.
defer it back to Mike.
Yeah. Good to go.
He doesn't, he was so great.
I'm not prepared.
He had that great line to you.
He's always prepared.
Welcome, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you.
So, excuse me, sorry. So, start doing stuff.
It's less now, so.
Yes.
So it's less now, so we are being live streamed, so.
We are, yeah, for-
Right, so we're at the other business?
Yes.
Alrighty. So the 2023 chair and vice chair elections.
Yes. So I would need a nomination for our chair. Mr. Fergus did say before he left that he wanted to continue to serve. So that's fine. A second, and then
And go.
Nomination.
Chairman's supposed to go.
That's right, yeah.
No, no.
Just kidding.
so,
Let the record show that.
let the record reflect. Okay, so I have a nomination for Mr. Fergus to continue serving as chair for 2023. That nomination, Mr. Ways, Mr. Bush. Against? Let's have it. Process for vice chair.
Bush, as chair, he's.
Mr. Bush, do you accept that nomination?
I do, that's
I need a second, thank you.
We do need a second, yes.
Who wants to second it? No, I'll second it.
So, got a nomination by Mr. Sweeney, seconded by Mr. Way, that Mr. Bush would continue for 2023 as our vice chair. Say aye.
Aye.
Okay, well, carries. Congratulations, Mr. Bush.
Thank you.
And as such, you may continue on with your chairmanship for the rest of this meeting.
No problem. Thank you so much. All right, so I think the next is to discuss proposed changes for, to the 2023 staff approval list.
Yes, so as a part of our process as staff, we're supposed to update the staff approval list every year. This is something that's a part of the code that basically says that items that you all agree are on this list. Basically, if I get an application for it, I can just staff approve it. I can always defer it to you, so if I get one that is staff approval, but I think that you all should see it, I can bring it to the board, but basically the things on this list are deferred to staff approval. So I think that when I sent this out to you, I noted that all of the changes were in red. So my explanation. So I feel like there's probably more changes in this year's version than have been in the past. And really the kind of nexus to that is we're starting to try to align our boards and commission staff approval list just to be less confusing for diversity and also for Franklinton, having a similar list. So a lot of the things you see here are because they're in one of those other lists. So this first one, this right-of-way vacation requests, that is in both the UIDRB, the University District, as well as the downtown section. So that's why that one's being added. And just as a reminder, we don't need to vote on this today. I wanted to walk you through why I'm proposing all these changes, and then we can vote on it in February. So if there's anything on this list that you're like, absolutely not, I can take those things back to management to say the board wasn't comfortable with that being on the list, and we can make some revisions. So the first one on here is this right-of-way vacation. Next is there's always been a section about safety violations, and ours previously had these bullet points: handrails, steps, and walkways, repair when a hazard would be impractical. I changed it to this paragraph form, just because that's how it's written in UIDRB. It's a little bit more open, specific bullet points that we have. So that was the revision there. Number 8, zoning clearance. This is another one where we had very specific examples of what could be approved as part of zoning clearance. And I'm just opening it up to just be zoning clearance. We did have at least one application in 22 where it was only for zoning clearance that they had to come to you all. Prep school that was restriping their parking lot, that was specifically for zoning clearance. So in that, if this were revised as I'm showing, that would never have needed to be reviewed by you all. So that's the change here. And that is also how it is in downtown. It's just blanket zoning clearance. Lot splits has been added to line up with downtown. Minor building changes, generally a single element. That is something that's added to line up with downtown and university. East Franklinton's a little bit different that, there are a lot of things that are exempted from needs. A lot of like basic home maintenance-y type things. So I'm not sure how often this would play.
Question. Is the historic resources commission fail over East Franklinton?
Fail?
I don't think it's in there.
Sir, can you say that louder?
The Historic Resource Commission, what's their area of influence?
Anywhere in the city. So there are 2 properties in East Franklinton that are on the Historic Resources Commission oversees all of the local registered buildings. So
Right,
you've got German Village, that's the district. HRC is like properties all over the city that are registered. So warehouse buildings on Rich, right by the road.
I didn't know if power superseded.
Where the 2 cross-pollinate is on those registered properties. So if you'll recall, when those warehouses came through, it had to be reviewed by you all and them. So for them to move forward to do anything on those properties, they need EFRB and
We've only done it.
there's very few
That's
that
why.
that are.
So just be clear that these are registered on the local, that is, say, the Columbus level historic review commission.
Correct.
It's not the federal.
Correct.
Right.
So I went back and looked at the one for those 373 and 375 Ridge Street to see HRC had issued a COA for that, and then COA that the EFRB issued, and there was no additional comments to what the HRC said. So I was suggesting this because they're going to be very thoroughly looking at the types of windows and tuck pointing and all of that. Bullet number 12, the whole thing is pulled directly out of what's in the staff approval list. That do just defer to see nothing, couldn't necessarily review it. And again, me personally, I'm going to be err on the side of caution that if there's anything I think that you all should see, I will bring it.
Just to be clear again, those 2 buildings are on the south side of Rich Street, you said?
Yes.
So they're at the easternmost edge of the River and Rich project, 2 buildings right against the river.
I can send out the link to you all where we have all of these. So you can like zoom in East Franklinton on the map and click on HRC and see which ones, but there's very.
You just say there's only those 2, right? This in like the Kierdorf house, or the, Finley. Oh, on Broad Street.
The Sullivan House?
Harrison House, yeah, the Harrison House.
Yes.
That has.
There's a few, but it's not like a district of them.
Village HRC district or.
But I can send, just for all of your record, I can send out the link on our GIS where you can just zoom into East Franklinton and click that layer and see which ones they are.
It would be helpful. I appreciate that. It goes to our conversation earlier.
And I will direct you to, there is a section of the East Franklinton plan. I think it's one of the appendices where it is they went through the different buildings and said like eligible, not eligible, modern, but understanding that, historic significance is kind of a revolving door. That plan was 2012. Things have gotten older since then. So we in evaluating historic significance of buildings, that's not like decision makers. But there is one in the.
Is the post office the other one? The old post office. I assume so.
I mean, that we.
Yeah, it's like
that
one of
was
those
your
buildings.
thing, that had to go through, but
I would assume if any building is that. But it's all to the owner, property owner, to whether or not to put it on that list. It could be the.
I don't remember going through that process with that.
And the reason I'm torturing this question is it has different implications, especially around parking, or including parking.
But,
We don't do parking.
But there are exceptions if something's on the register.
yes,
That's what I said.
there can be a parking reduction granted for something on the local register, which one could interpret as an incentive to be registered if you want to have less parking. So this is our Columbus Site Information Resource thing in somewhere. Historic and design review areas. So these, so yeah, there's like the three. This one, the Harrison House and Sullivan Land Office. This one. Post office. And the warehouse buildings gone.
Good enough, thanks.
So there's three. I'd love to see that list grow, but for now, we have three. But yeah, so that was the point of that one, is the HRC is probably gonna take a lot heavier handed look at them. And then the last one is, opening up graphics. I'm not requesting authority to approve all things graphics, but if something comes in that is to the T consistent with the guidelines and code, to save you all from having to discuss it. Something like Catalina's that we saw, that would obviously come to you because it's not consistent. This Ohio Health would come to you. Something that is consistent, I could just review. So those are the proposed changes. Have any immediate thoughts on them? I have taken back management, noodle it over, and anything comes to you to me in the next couple weeks, and I can vote on this at the.
Back to the HRC,
Yes,
so what are the certificate of impervious being requested for? Any sort of modification to those properties or?
the exterior modification, they're gonna have to go through HRC.
Okay,
Downspouts,
anything.
Paint color.
bank offers, yeah.
Okay. The only other question I had is lot splits is a very broad category. So that what I see often is that lots have been combined. Sometimes they're reverted back to the original parcel lines, and other times they're split in a. So typically the reversion is sort of an automatic thing the city approves without any type of very site. The splitting them in a different manner requires a zoning application. So what would this be? Say lot splits? Is that just any and all lot splits?
written as is, yes. And that is, say, that came from the downtown commission list. So if you have suggestions on making that more specific, one that think of, there was any cases we've had in the last year would have like only been a lot split, but nothing's jumping out at me. I think that one was again more of kind of a basic one that was easy to pull over from down. Specific.
Normally, if you're splitting a lot, it's for some type of development plan, so then that plan can trigger a case.
That's what I asked too.
The only exception to that is if you just want to split it to sell the lots off individually, then that in theory buys that lot if they want something on it.
And you can't, you wouldn't create non-conforming lots based upon, although this is EFR, this is East Franklinton, what's a conforming lot? I guess, yeah, but I guess the last use determination would determine what makes it a lot conforming.
That one troubles me a little.
Inverse is lot combinations, so if somebody has several parcels and they want to combine them,
We,
yeah, or if it's a development plan that would come before, but if they just wanted to do a lot.
well, since it's not on this list, that's previously. If it's not on this list, it's coming to the board. And even some of the stuff on this list is coming to the board. But, hey, we've definitely in the last year had many more projects that are requiring lot combinations than lot splits.
But that's usually triggered by development.
But for example, Gravity 3, when we had to split that into the 5 different applications because we had the demos, the lot combination was its own thing in that one. But I'm not proposing to put lot combinations. It's not on any of it. It's probably for those same reasons, but if you would prefer it not be on there, if you would prefer it only be on there with specifications, send me those and I can.
I guess how would staff review a lot split? What would be acceptable?
It's not, it's appropriate if it is, it's not, yes. And, but again, it goes back to the standards, what actually makes it conform. Again, it probably goes back to the use, right? I mean, it was residential before, you would go to what the plan recommends for what determines the setbacks, things where you would prove it if it does. Sorry, that was terrible. But my point is, I don't know, it could get a little dicey.
I would be happy to check in with Ms. Taba, who staffs the downtown commission, how often that comes into play and in what scenario and what type of materials like people submit to him. I could see maybe where I'm not sure how it looked like is if it was solely just someone handing me an application for a lot. Yet in a lot of the projects that we've talked about, thinking back to those, town homes that are going to be at the corner of Rich and Skidmore. That land bank where there's the big flood zone.
Right, yeah,
They would split that out.
Yeah.
Could that be staff approval for them to split the front part of that out? But again, that's a part of the larger project, or maybe you approve that project and then 3 years from now, they're like, let's just split that off.
Well, but we approved it with that lot being, at the least, that it was part of it.
I'm happy to talk to them about that.
State.
So, just wanted to think.
Yeah, I don't either. Right, because,
I mean, I don't understand all of the variations on it.
And I don't know that we'll see much of it here. I can tell you outside East Franklinton, there's been lot splits where, like, let's say you take 3 lots. Somebody then wants to split them into 4. So you're making the lots a little narrow. Whatever on it. and typically staff would do that, but I've seen area commissions not. They wanted to do something.
Yeah.
really okay with it.
Another,
So that's just the nuance of that.
yeah, and in East Franklinton, ADUs aren't allowed. So you could have someone who wants a single family home want to split their lot and attempt to sell the back of it for someone to build a house over a garage. Or split it and build a house on a garage. And then just trying to think of scenarios where someone,
Well-
because they can't do ADUs but we've had people inquire about how to do that and one, if they were separate lots.
Yeah, and I was one of the people that were at that table right there. And I still have to talk more about that, but my final point to add to what you're saying is that, you know, Franklinton, my street, Walnut Street, right? Many of the houses almost over the line, some of them are. And that's a normal thing for the old neighborhood. I don't know if they weren't looking at the plats for it back then, but they did that all. And to clean that up would require lot splitting and then lot combinations. And to have that come before this board would be probably it's just a legal,
That's just a legal thing. That's a legal thing.
well, it's,
Doesn't really change.
you don't actually have to do a lot split in that case. I'm gonna say you 5 feet
No, no,
on
I'm
the
not
side.
saying you don't. I'm just saying, but it's more a legal.
Yeah, exactly. So it should be staff approval as well.
Yeah, but I'm going back to the, if you have 3 lots, you can make them into 4. Then you can only put a certain type of unit on the smaller lot, and that then sets a design thing. Like maybe we wouldn't approve smaller houses, whatever they want. So that, or it has an implication about,
Larger, the future project.
project, that would be a concern.
Ask and see kind of how often or, because I'm not the only one that's looking at their staff approval list right now, and we have a larger group of the team that is trying to make these lists better, so it could be that that team is saying, why is this even on the list? So I'll ask about people who do have it on the list, how often their group is thinking about keeping. Is there anything else on this list that we want to talk about? The only other item on the list is probably sometime in December. I may have emailed you, you may have gotten an email about her feedback survey. We just encourage everyone to take that. Last year we made a conscious effort to fill the seats and bring in new people who are interested and retain people who are and we want to make sure that I asked you all about the checklist at the end of the reports. Like, we want to make sure that, things are going well and the best that you think they could be, and that everyone's okay, continuing to serve, and those types of things. So we just encourage everyone to take a few minutes to fill that out. Send you the link to it.
I know I filled it out, like.
You did.
As soon as it came out, so,
Okay.
but that was, I think about like 2 months ago.
It was before the holidays, so I'm happy to resend you the link if you're not sure if you filled it out or not. I think it was anonymous though. So.
Someone keeps sending emails filled out.
Does she?
Yes.
She's probably just, well, since it's anonymous, she would have no idea. So, if you're not sure if you did, I'll send you the link and you.
Oh, but
So
say
I
something different the second time.
mean, you could, but.
They're gonna probably count the certain.
Yeah.
All complete one, I think there might be a little extra.
So you're going to toys.
Yes. So that's just our plea, that if you have the time, if you could fill that out, it would be great.
Saying this is German. Yeah. Yeah, well, we're adjourned. See you next month.
Stephanie, would that survey have been sent out to all area commissioners, not just East Bay?
It would have just been to our boards, commissions, and panels. So EFRB, UIDRB, downtown, Dermot. So
Okay.
not the area.
I'm just making sure I didn't get like, you didn't else that fill out the Franklinton area commission one and not this
Oh,
one.
got it. Yeah, no, this one would have just been for like this. Just privilege.
figure, so. That you're-
I forgot it last month and had to come back for it.
It was